Welcome to the press conference on Rust and Bone. I'd like to introduce the people at the table right at the end. We have Thomas Bidegain, who was in charge of the screenplay. Next to me, just as good as in Bullhead, which is the film that revealed him, and full of delicatesse, Matthias Schoenaerts. Next to him, with many Oscars and awards, the person who has no fears and who was wholeheartedly with us this morning, Marion Cotillard. And finally, back in Cannes, after his jury grand prize, just a grand prize. Oh, that's even better. Back after a prophet, Jacques Audiard, who is also a self-made hero. Who shall I put the first question to? Rust and Bone is adapted from a novel by Craig Davidson, but Ali and Stephanie, the main characters, are not in that novel. So how did you draw inspiration from this collection of short stories? With Tom, we wrote our preceding film. It was very masculine. It took place in prison. There wasn't much light. The area was very confined. There were no women. So, of course, we wanted to portray a love story full of light and space, and that's what happened. The Craig Davidson book is something that I read, and I appreciated it because of its literary qualities. And it sort of was mulled over in my mind. That's why I was talking about the prophet, because we talked about this with Thomas, and we thought, well, why not have a love story in this time of crisis? That's why the male character were totally transformed, the female character as well, and a love story occurred.
I have a question for the director. My name is Nandini. I'm from India. This is on the condition that you don't say it's a secret. Well, how did you make Stephanie's legs look the way they did?
Les effets spéciaux.
Je les ai coupés.
I cut them.
Elles ont bien poussé.
They grew back nicely. I couldn't perhaps have done the film some 10 years ago because it would have been totally impossible. And had I turned this into a special effect, it would have been too heavy and a real bind. Now things are much easier. You just put special devices and you can do away with the latter segment of the legs in a lab. Now you can use a handheld camera to produce special effects. It's tremendous progress. One can be totally realistic. I'd like to put a question to Marion as well. How do you play a character in this way? You have these stockings on to hide the amputation, but you live a totally different way. You have to move in a different way when you don't have legs anymore. And how did you manage to portray the character in such a real way, showing such strength and weakness at the same time? Well, when she loses her legs, most of the time I was in a wheelchair, and then you just have to use your imagination. I don't really know how I can explain this. I don't know whether it would be very useful even to do so, but one just tries to imagine that one doesn't have any legs any longer. And then when I stand up, we had to find something that looked good on the screen, because in fact when you live with false legs and walk with false legs, artificial limbs, it usually works quite well. So I had to imagine that I had these metal legs. You really had to get under the skin of the character. And Jacques kept saying to me, Well, sometimes let's imagine that she forgets she's lost her legs, so you can try and stand up and fall over because you've forgotten you've got no legs anymore. So that's what we tried to portray in the film.
Bonjour, moi je m'appelle Roland, je suis
Roland?
de la télévision néerlandaise.
Dutch television. My French is very poor. It's very good, on the contrary.
I'll do it in English. Miss Cotillard, thank you very much. A wonderful performance. Meneer Schoenaerts, godverdomme, dat was hij goed. Dank u wel. Monsieur Audiard, the question is for you. Thank you, I love the film. In the film you are portraying orcas as this violent force of nature, and also your male lead, played by Mr. Schoenaerts, is this violent force of nature, almost like an orca, except with two legs. Can you tell me about your fascination with physical power?
J'espère que j'ai bien compris, mais je vais quand même faire un petit check. Pour la force physique.
Yes, physical strength and power.
Je sais pas si dans ce film-là, oui, ça j'en suis certain.
Of course, I do portray it at length in the film.
Ne rentre pas du tout dans mes critères masculins.
Matthias doesn't comply with my male criteria in any way. I beg your pardon? I was saying that in terms of physical power, well, no, Matthias doesn't really comply with my usual male criteria. I like small men. And I myself was very surprised to choose this very large, tall man with strong muscles. But that's what the film is all about. It tells the tale of these characters at a time of crisis. People, in order to eat, have to sift through the contents of garbage bins. It's a time of crisis, and that's what I wanted to show in the film. And that's why physical power becomes very important. It's the only thing people have. It's the only thing he has, because he isn't very conversant or fluent in terms of language, and so all he has to fall back on is the physical power and strength.
Hello, is it on? Yes. Charlotte Higgins from The Guardian. It's a question for Monsieur Audiard. The question is... I'll wait. Thank you. I wanted to ask you, to what extent it's a literary adaptation? Could you talk about the way you worked with Craig Davidson's text to create your own vision?
Ouais. Je retire mes oreilles. Ce que je commençais à dire tout à l'heure, effectivement,
It's what I was saying earlier on.
Je pense que
I believe
on a travaillé assez longtemps quand même avec Tom
that we
sur le
worked
texte.
at length with Tom on the text. Stop me if I'm incorrect here.
À partir du moment où on crée de nouveaux personnages, on inventait de nouveaux personnages.
We created new characters. We invented new characters because we wanted to tell this love story. And what we realized was that we had been fairly faithful to Craig Davidson in terms of color, mood, atmosphere. We weren't faithful to the letter, but we were faithful in terms of form. What we wanted to do was to adapt these short stories written by Craig Davidson, but the tale takes place in France. Craig Davidson's stories are very hard, they're very harsh, the characters are very solitary, so we wanted to add a bit of light and sun. Hence the idea or the desire to portray a love story.
Comment vous travaillez ensemble?
How do you work together?
La complicité d'écriture entre
How do you write things together?
Mais très bien.
Well, we work extremely well together.
Jacques avait repéré les
Jacques
nouvelles, je les ai lues et puis j'ai commencé à
showed me these short stories and I read them. I was working on the editing, and you stop me if I'm mistaken here. I was working on the editing of A Prophet, and the idea was to produce, to make this film, and we met every morning at 9:30, and we got to work at 10, and continued up until lunch, and then in the afternoon we worked independently, and this took about 2 years to do.
Ben Hoyle from the Times. It's really a question for Matthias. Hollywood is always crying out for a big, physically big action hero who can really act. And I just wondered, after your performance in this, whether you've had any contact with American films, what your ambitions are in that direction, and really for Jacques and Marion, how you see Matthias's prospects in global cinema as well as this kind of film.
Well, it's funny you say so, because last week they called me for Rambo 34. And I said, I'll do it if I get 35 and 36 as well. No, I don't know. No, there's a lot of stuff moving, and I'm excited, but I'm not in a rush, so I take my time and I just look for exciting projects, and there's definitely stuff moving in the States, but I got time. I'm not in a hurry. I'm quite young, I guess. So I take my time.
Marion?
Moi, je pense que
I think that Matthias is a tremendous actor. I think he can play all sorts of different parts. I wish him a stupendous career, a vast career. I've been very fortunate to work in different countries. I've had an opportunity to explore different cultures and characters. That's very interesting. And I'm not at all worried about Matthias.
Bonjour, c'est Alessia Strenati,
the Web Italian Press. I have a question to the two actors. We saw you in a film, and in this film it portrays very hard scenes. You have to go through a number of trials and ordeals. You're in a universe that's very different. It's a far cry from what most of us ever experience in our lives. Yet you manage to endure these situations and succeed. In your career, in your personal lives, have you had similar trials and ordeals you've had to overcome, comparable, for example, to what happens in the film? Let's hope not. Marion? I don't have the impression that these two people are so far removed from the daily lives of many people. I'm sorry to disagree with you. In fact, I rather have the impression that they unfortunately belong to the sad reality of many people. Of course, we all have ordeals in our lives, tough times we have to overcome. We all have a survival instinct, however, that's something we all share. And what we also share on Earth is the quest for happiness. When you have enough strength to turn towards life and happiness, one can overcome these difficulties and these ordeals in life, sometimes these dramatic, tragic situations. Matthias? Same question? Of course, we all experience trials and tribulations in life, but they help us as actors and actresses. Sometimes also we can open up new avenues and paths for people when they watch our films. That's one of the things we try to do when we are actors. If we can help some guidance to people who are a bit lost in life, that gives meaning to our job as actors.
Hi, Rodrigo Fonseca from Global Brazil. My question is for Mr. Audiard.
Vous êtes là. Mais je vois rien du tout.
The fighting scenes of the film are sublime, incredible, the way you direct them.
Merci, monsieur.
I would like you to tell us how did you work with Stéphane Fontaine, your cinematographer, to design the scenes, and I would like to know if you used a fighting choreographer to design the scenes.
Oui, je travaillais avec Olivier Schneider, mais je travaille sur tous les...
Yes, I worked with Olivier Schneider. I've done 3 films with Olivier Schneider, who trained Matthias for quite a long period of time. I have a problem when filming violence, personally. It's a bit strange to say that I hate violence, because in each film there is such violence. I keep reverting to it. Olivier knows what I'm going to like. The idea was to make things as realistic as possible. However, we didn't want things to be too gory. For a very simple reason. The female character is watching these scenes, and if things get too gory, I felt that this would really be a drawback. For example, Marion Stéphanie watches Ali Matthias when he's fighting, and I wanted her to admire his courage. I don't think that violence per se is something that is going to appeal to her. So there was a tremendous amount of rehearsing. Olivier Schneider worked with Matthias. They rehearsed a lot, and then he periodically showed me little bits of film, and I said, yes, this is good, no, not that. And usually we had 2 cameras to shoot the fights. We were quite poor, in other words.
Christian Jungen, NZZ am Sonntag Suisse. Une question pour
I have a question for Jacques Audiard. First of all, congratulations on this very beautiful film. Thank you. Why, Cannes, did you think of the festival? Well, it was shot just nearby, so we thought it'd be very handy to pop in. We had the Palais just a step away, and we thought, well, maybe we could drop by the Palais. Why the festival? Why the Cannes Festival? Because why was the film shot in Cannes? There's a marine land. There's only one in France with killer whales. It's in Antibes, just along the coast. And the story had to take place in Antibes. And I wanted to shoot the film in a very sunny place on the French Riviera.
Hello, this is Peter. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Peter Verhout, Télévision Allemande.
German television. I have a question for Mr. Audiard and the actors. Why did you choose Matthias Schoenaerts and Marion Cotillard? Why did you decide to have the 2 actors in this film? I'll give you a quick answer. When we finished writing the screenplay with Thomas, in fact, when we were writing it, we weren't really thinking about the actors. And once we finished, I obviously thought about Marion, because I wanted to work with her. I had wanted to work with her for quite some time. I wanted our destinies to come together. I was overwhelmed by some of her films. And when it comes to the male character, we thought initially about a non-professional actor. We did some casting in boxing stadia and sports centers, but something just didn't click. It didn't work. It was different. It was too overly realistic. And then Richard Rousseau, who was in charge of the casting, showed me Bullhead. It hadn't been screened in France yet, and I think it's a fabulous film. And I thought Matthias was great. So that's how it happened. That is the tale of the casting.
Chris for Belgium. Matthias. It is your eerste Cannes, this is your first Cannes. Could you express what you're feeling and what this experience means for you? And because you look very zen at the moment.
Oh, do I? Well, I'm really excited to be here, and actually, I'm even more excited to see the film tonight. I haven't seen it so far, so I'm really.
It would be a good
looking,
surprise.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And afterwards, I don't know, it's exciting, feeling so much love for the film. People are talking about it. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to anticipate on whatever, but I'm happy to be here with Jacques, Marion, Thomas, and the whole team. Why not team? So let's make it a big party. I hope so.
Thank you for this stunning film, Pascal Niçois. Thank you for this wonderful film shot on the French Riviera. It was a very pleasant surprise and an honor for us. It was a pleasure for us as well. Seriously. It took you 2 years to prepare. How did you work with the actors? Were there a lot of rehearsals? Or did you shoot things off the bat? How did you actually work on the film? You mean before we actually started the shooting, during this 2-year period? Prior to actual shooting, it took us 2 years to write the screenplay, and then preparation. Well, I knew we didn't have a lot of time available. There were a lot of constraints in terms of the timing. There were given dates for Marineland. Marion had her commitments as well. And we knew that we couldn't delay the shooting of the film. With Marion, we thought, well, we'll just jump in at the deep end. And with Matthias, Matthias had to do some physical preparation for the film. So I saw him quite often in Paris. But that's how things worked out. With hindsight, well, I like doing things differently each time round. I thought with Marion, if we'd met together and talked about it, I would have asked her, how are you going to limp a bit more, a bit less? Well, I don't know. It was good to leave things as a sort of a surprise. Things had to move fast, just like the love story. I don't regret anything. It was excellent. It was a film without tremendous preparation, and it worked out extremely well.
Bonjour.
On vous prend toujours votre... Mais j'ai remarqué. Je fais une pétition.
I noticed. I will do a petition. I can only see you. I can't see beyond the second row. Imagine there are directors who can't see beyond the second row in a room. What stage were we at? Yes. Tatiana Vensa, Colombia. I have a question for Marion Cotillard. You said last week that you can never say no to an offer to work with Jacques Audiard, but when you read the screenplay, you thought the part of Stephanie might be quite difficult. And do you think there's a great difference between the French cinema and the American cinema as an actress, because you've had both experiences? When I read the screenplay written by Jacques and Thomas, I was really overwhelmed by the story and deeply excited, because on the whole, when I read a script and I feel the story moves me and I want to be part of the venture, I find that I usually immediately understand the character. I understand who the person is, not completely, not entirely, of course, because it takes time to discover a character, and that also is what interests me as an actress. With Stephanie, I reached the end of the script and I still didn't know who she was. That's one of the first things I said to Jacques. I said, well, I'm a bit scared. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. And he said that he didn't know either. And the idea to learn about this character together, in the end, really excited me and inspired me.
Ah oui, on me pose tout le temps cette question, effectivement.
I'm often asked that question,
à laquelle il est difficile de répondre
but it's very difficult to answer it.
Parce que chaque aventure, et c'est ce que j'aime dans ce
Each
métier, chaque
adventure
est différente.
is different, and that's what I like in what I do.
Mon point de vue de comédienne,
Insofar as I'm
après,
concerned as an
effectivement, il y a des
actress,
différences
of course there are
qui sont
technical
franchement pas
differences
très intéressantes,
which
je pense, à raconter.
aren't really
Mais,
worth going into
moi,
in
je vais voir
detail.
une grande différence entre un film de Jacques qu'un film
A
de
film
Michael
by
Mann,
Jack and a film by Michael Mann are totally different. And there are huge differences between a film by Michael Mann and a film by Chris Nolan. There are differences between a film done by Jacques and someone else. So each adventure has its own captain, and no two adventures are the same. That's what's wonderful.
Bonjour, Archie Fantôme de VTN, télévision belge. J'ai une question pour
I have a question for Marion. What was it like to be in this film with Matthias?
Bah, c'est toujours une plongée dans quelque chose de
Working with Matthias is always very intense. It's a very intense experience to work with a great actor and to be on a set and forget you're actually on a set, because the set becomes reality. It's no longer just a film. I felt very fortunate to work with such outstanding actors. Matthias is one of these people, like DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis, and many others. He's of that ilk. He launches into a project. It's always complicated. I'm trying to forget you're sitting just next to me. It's hard to talk freely about you when you're just sitting next to me.
L'investissement d'un acteur dans un rôle, c'est
an actor becomes totally committed to a part, and then of course there's the talent. There are a number of things one can't explain. There are no words to explain it. There's the desire, the will to explore as well, and that is something he very much has. The first time I saw him, we were reading a text with Jacques, and I saw him. I saw his huge back, and I thought it must be him. I'd never seen a picture. I'd never seen a photo. I was familiar with his name, but that's all. I'd never seen his picture. I'd never seen any images of him, and I imagined, I don't know why, often, perhaps what you said earlier on is the explanation. I imagined him as someone who was probably much smaller.
Et puis les premières lectures qu'on a faites,
and then we read through the script together, and immediately, right away, there was this tremendous joy. I felt so happy to be able to work with someone who I didn't know at all, but who, as of the very first reading, completely filled me with the thought that this would be a very beautiful experience. Wow. Did you want to answer as well? Well, right at the very beginning, when Jacques called me and said, well, I'd like to work with you. Marion will be portraying Stephanie. And I was intimidated. I thought, boy, it's incredible. There's Jacques, there's Marion. I'm never going to manage. I'll be useless, hopeless. I was very anxious about this. And the first day when we started shooting with Marion, because for 3 weeks, it was just Ali with his sister and with his kid, and 3 weeks later, there was a scene with Stephanie, and I saw Marion before the rehearsal. She was in a wheelchair like this. She looked totally depressed, and I thought, it's not going to work out very well with Marion. I don't know what on earth to do. Should I talk to her? And she was there looking really sad and upset. And I didn't realize that she was already completely in Stephanie's world. To start with, it made me feel really scared. I thought, boy, what's up? What's wrong? I can't really even talk to her. She seems to be totally mute and locked into a different universe. And then I realized, well, she had already become Stephanie. She was in Stephanie's world. She is an exceptional actress, and she does everything to her utmost ability. And Jacques is always very demanding, extremely sensitive, highly intelligent, and he enables us to expand and develop and move into areas that we might never have thought of. So I was very, very happy to be in this film with Marion, to work with Jacques. It was overwhelming. It was a tremendous gift. You said it was stunning? Yes, absolutely stunning.
Bonjour.
Good morning. Now I finally have the microphone. I shall use it. I'd like to put a question to you. We've run through many, but I would like to ask the following to Mr. Audiard. Marion Cotillard has played a number of parts. Some, like La Môme, she's played many different parts. Why did you think she had the inner strength to portray Stephanie? You've been honored in many ways. You've got Oscars and many other awards. What for you is special about Cannes? Well, it's a tremendous emotion for me. I'm always surprised when people talk about the wonderful things that have happened to me, all these prizes and awards, but I really don't see what the link is with the Cannes Festival. This is the first time that I've been in a film in the official selection. I'm very happy indeed. I didn't think I would feel so happy about it. And I'm very pleased and joyful because Cannes is an iconic festival. There have been so many great films screened in Cannes, so many beautiful tales, stories, so many tremendous actors. I'm particularly pleased, therefore, to be here with Jacques' film. Have I answered your question? There we go. Well, you know, recognition is something one gets when people go to see your film. We want to portray these tales in film so people can see them, and that's what really counts.
Oui, pardon. Comment est-ce que je
I may already have said this. I was deeply touched by La Môme, by Olivier Dahan, by Marion's acting in the film. Marion is a very sensual yet virile actress. And what I saw in La Môme was that she was truly capable of moving over to the other side. How can I put it? She can follow through with an emotion completely and reach the other side of the wall, so to speak. There aren't. There are many actors and actresses, but there are very few who can really plunge into a character in the same way Marion does and go that far. Yet she is so feminine all the time. Everything is very incarnate.
Hello, over here.
Bye, see.
Yes.
Harlan Jacobson, Philadelphia Inquirer, WBGO Radio, and TalkCinema.com. I have two questions for you, Monsieur Audiard. One is technical, and the other is thematic. Technically, where we began the press conference, you talked about how you couldn't have done this picture 10 years ago. I'd like to know a little bit more about that. What really is the setup when you go to shoot this thing? What is the equipment you're using? What's the day like when you have to do that? And it strikes me as a further development on that, is it harder to do that in a water scene than in a land scene? Is it harder to achieve the CGI when you're matching with water rather than simply, a straightforward daylight scene? So I'd like to know about that technically, and then I'd like a question about theme.
Oui, pardon. Je disais tout à l'heure que
I said earlier on that I thought that I couldn't have done the film 10 years ago. I wouldn't have had the patience because I believe, well, I'm a very bad technician. I'm bad at technical things. That is not necessarily one of the skills one has to have as a director. 10 years ago, we worked with different techniques, and we would have had to rehearse all the movements. We would have had to be extraordinarily accurate all the time. We would have had to work against a blue background, for example. Now, thanks to general technical progress, we can work with handheld devices. I've worked with an Epic, with a digital camera. I won't go into the technical details per se, but what I realized was, and this surprised me no end, what I found was that there was absolutely no change in terms of lighting. I didn't have to wait at all for the special effects in the film. In fact, I discovered all this when I was making the film. The people were there, they were going about their business, and things moved ahead really quickly. Sometimes we did double takes, but that's about all. And what about the water? Water?
Non, mais en fait, moi, j'avais sur l'entraînement, j'étais pas une très bonne nageuse.
I wasn't a very good swimmer, so I had to train and improve my swimming. When I reached a good level in terms of the crawl and managed to do the crawl using my entire body, then I had to learn how to do it without moving my legs, because if you move the water, well, that wouldn't have produced the desired effect. So I simply swam just using my arms. Well, as to special effects in water, it's the same. This wasn't any more complicated. I learned a tremendous amount, and I myself was constantly surprised to see what we could do.
The second question, thematically, is these are characters who exist inside their bodies, and each have sort of different orientation as a man and a woman towards the physical world, and different expectations, and yet each of them really set out on a kind of a spiritual trip as well. This isn't the first film where you have, in fact, put characters in motion looking for a kind of a spiritual, on a spiritual journey. So I'm wondering why you feel it's important to do that, to take characters on a journey towards their spirit.
Well, I would be tempted to say that that's what dramatic art is all about, but I don't want to sound trite. What can I add? I'm not sure I really fully understood your question, but there's something that is striking in the screenplay. The characters, indeed, were going to undergo major changes. Stephanie, for example, is an arrogant princess at the beginning of the film, and she obviously was going to experience something. She was going to experience life. Well, is life a kind of a way of just relaxing and opening up to others? Well, that's something she is going to learn, thanks to her misfortune. In fact, thanks to the accident that befalls her. She's going to experience something that's quite wonderful. And he is going to learn as well. He's so full of his own body. He has so many problems with words. He's just going to learn to say, I love you. That is the tremendous progress that character makes. I don't know whether it's a huge spiritual progress, but it does help in life. These are characters who try to rise above their situation throughout the film. I don't know whether this is a spiritual quest per se, but these are people who are trapped in very difficult situations, and that's what we wanted to show. This was in the short stories as well. We wanted to show these simple destinies or fates that were magnified by accidents. Ali and Stephanie are characters who, throughout the film, with all their physical strengths, try to rise above their situation. She tries to rise above her situation as an amputee, and he rises above his situation as well. I come from Indonesia, and I have some questions for you all. When the shooting was finished, did you celebrate together? And what was your first emotion when you watched the film? When we watched the film for the first time, what was the initial emotion that you experienced? Well, I felt scared. When we saw it for the first time, we thought there's a lot of work that remains to be done, but it's a lengthy process. You have to see a film several times over, and then after this long process, it turns into what you really want it to be. After several series of editing, you start to feel that the film is what you were aiming at. It complies with the initial project. I think you have to ask this question to the people who had this real shock, who didn't work on the film and just saw it once it was completely finished. I've never been able to answer this kind of question, in fact. First of all, when I see a film in which I act for the very first time, it's very complicated, it's very disturbing. And then sometimes it's almost too intimate a question to answer. And did we celebrate? Yes, we did, but I had already left. I don't celebrate hardly anything at my age now. And Matthias will be seeing it for the first time this evening. One last question?
Okay, yes. I'm Paris Johet from the BBC Persian, and my question is to Mr. Audiard. I thought that I feel that you're a bit different to other French filmmakers. When I follow your films, you're dealing with some critical social problems such as unemployment, poverty, and racism. And I wonder to what extent you feel yourself different to other French filmmakers, in the contemporary French filmmakers. And another question is to Matthias as well. I felt a bit similarity between your character in this film and your previous film, The Bullhead, in terms of physical violence and that you put in the film. How much did you find that, the similarity between these two characters when you played this role? Thank you.
Peut-être Matthias.
Well, to me, basically, they're two totally different characters. Of course, they resemble. They have a physical aspect to it that makes them look quite similar. But I think their basic energy is totally different. There, where Jackie is more of a tormented, depressed guy, I think Ali is someone who's just taking life the way it comes and just dealing with life. And he's being happy about it. He's selfish, but at the same time, he's simple, he's sincere. He's not a guy who's just calculating his life. He's just living it the way it comes. And so to me, that's it's absolutely different from Jackie. He's totally aware of the drama that he lives, and he's completely absorbing it, which to me is a totally different mindset. And but I think there's something that we're overlooking here. I think this story is also a story about reconciliation, and that to me is probably the biggest theme in the film. It's reconciliation between man and woman, father and child, brother and sister, man and animal. And to me, that is something that is very important in this day and age. I don't want to be too romantic about it or too philosophical, but I think that is something that really touches us on a deepest level. And I think that is an awareness that, that should be raised in this day and age. Am I being too serious now?
No, no.
No? Okay,
no.
sorry.
Perfect.
No, I just wanted to say it. So.
Jacques.
Oui, pardon, sur la question, sur le premier volet de la question, juste comme ça, très personnellement, moi je me sens très français,
I feel very, very French. I feel I am a truly French director. I don't know why, but it's a fact of life. I'm a prototype of the French cinema buff. Perhaps this is an endangered species. The species was deemed to be endangered as of the 80s about. But I feel deeply French. I'm keenly interested in what happens in this neck of the woods. And I can't do critical work. I love the French cinema. Perhaps, well, I was born and raised with the French cinema, and I feel deeply attached to it. And perhaps the critics could tell me in what way I'm different. Thank you.